The return. Why those who leave always come back to the light they abandoned. There is a particular kind of absence that arrives without explanation. No farewell. No closure. No reason given for the sudden silence where someone used to be. And then weeks later, sometimes months, they return, as if no time passed, as if the leaving was simply a pause in a story they assumed was still theirs to write. And you find yourself with a question that has no simple answer. Why now? What changed? And what, if anything, does this mean? Today, we explore that question. Not to offer false comfort, not to give easy answers, but to look honestly at what happens inside a person when they lose something they did not know how to value while they had it. Part 1. The music you didn't notice. There is a kind of love that does not announce itself loudly. It is consistent, warm, quietly present in the background of another person's life. Like music playing softly in a room where someone is focused on other things. They do not notice it consciously. They simply feel better there without knowing why. And then one day the music stops, and the silence is deafening. This is what happens when someone who was given consistent, genuine love chooses to leave it. Not because the love wasn't real, but because they were too distracted, too afraid, too convinced of their own permanence in someone else's life to understand what they were holding. You don't notice the warmth until the room goes cold. And by the time the cold arrives, by the time the silence begins to ask its questions, the one who left the music on has already found other rooms to fill with sound. Part 2. The thing they actually miss. When someone returns after a long absence, the temptation is to believe they simply missed you. And perhaps they did. But look more carefully at what they are really reaching for. They are not reaching for attention. Attention can be found anywhere. They are reaching for connection. For the specific feeling of being known truly, unhurriedly, completely known by someone who chose to stay when staying was not easy. They missed the loyalty that didn't ask to be noticed. The support that arrived before they knew they needed it. The warmth of someone who believed in them quietly when they could not believe in themselves. That kind of connection is rare. And the person who left has spent their absence learning just how rare it is. The hard way, the slow way, the way that leaves marks. Part 3. Silence as mirror. Here is something most people underestimate. Silence is not empty. When you stop reaching out, when you stop explaining yourself, when you stop making yourself available to someone who treated your presence as guaranteed, that silence becomes a mirror. And in that mirror, they are forced to see something they spent a long time successfully avoiding: themselves. When someone is always available, always responding, always forgiving, always holding the door open, the person they are holding it for never has to confront the consequences of their behavior. The emotional benefits remain. The comfort remains. The sense of being chosen remains, without the work that should accompany it. But the moment that presence withdraws, the moment the silence falls and does not break, everything they were avoiding begins to surface. The words left unsaid, the care taken for granted, the love that was treated as an infinite resource rather than a precious gift. Silence does not punish. It simply stops making distraction possible. And in that stillness, a person is left alone with the truest, most uncomfortable teacher they will ever encounter: their own reflection. Part 4. The weight of absence. There is a particular kind of loss that does not arrive immediately. It builds. First, the phone feels slightly quieter than usual. Then the days feel slightly flatter. Then, a memory arrives without invitation. A small kindness, a specific laugh, a moment when someone showed up when no one else did. And suddenly the loss is not small at all. This is the delayed reckoning that most people who leave are not prepared for. They left believing they had time, believing the door would remain open, believing that love, once given freely, would simply wait for them to decide they wanted it. But you were not waiting. You were growing, quietly, steadily, in the direction of yourself, rediscovering what existed in you before you poured so much of it into someone who did not know what to do with it. And that growth, that peace, that quiet luminosity of someone who has chosen themselves reaches people across distances they did not expect. Part 5. Emotional youth in an adult body. Here is one of the hardest truths about the people who leave without explanation. Sometimes it is not carelessness. Sometimes it is fear. Love, at its depth, requires something terrifying. To be seen, fully, without performance. In the places we are uncertain, unfinished, afraid. For someone who was never taught how to sit with their own emotion, who learned early that feelings are managed through distraction, not reflection. That kind of intimacy is overwhelming. Not because they don't feel it, but because they feel it too much and have no language for what to do with that much feeling. And so they leave. Not always with intention, sometimes with confusion, sometimes with the genuine belief that distance will make things simpler. It does not. Distance only makes the truth more difficult to avoid. Life is a patient teacher. It waits until the distraction stops working, until the noise grows quiet enough for the real questions to be heard. What did I walk away from? What was I afraid of? What would I do differently if given the chance? And sometimes, not always, but sometimes, that reflection becomes growth. The emotional youth encounters enough of life's weight to begin maturing into something more accountable, more honest, more capable of the depth they once ran from. Part 6. The power of choosing yourself. There is a particular energy that surrounds someone who has chosen themselves over the comfort of being chosen. It is not loud. It does not perform. It does not chase or explain or beg to be understood. It simply exists. Clear, grounded, unmistakable. And it is, without question, the most magnetic thing a person can carry. When you stop making yourself available to someone who is uncertain about you, when you stop adjusting your worth to fit inside someone else's indecision, something shifts. Not for them. For you. You remember what you bring. You remember what you are. You stop measuring your value by whether or not someone specific is able to see it. And in that remembering, something extraordinary happens. You begin to glow in a way that has nothing to do with being witnessed. That glow is what they feel in the silence. Not because you arranged it for them, but because it is simply what happens when a person comes home to themselves. And they notice, not right away, but in the quiet hours, in the moments when distraction fails to fill the specific shape of what they left behind. They notice, the version of me that existed in that connection was the best version I have known. And they come back searching for it. Part 7. What you owe the return. When someone returns after the silence, after the absence, after the long and private education that loss provides, you are not obligated to open the door simply because they knocked. Growth on their part does not create debt on yours. While they were learning, you were also learning. While they were sitting with the weight of what they left, you were discovering how little you needed them to stay in order to be whole. The question is not whether they have changed. The question is, who have you become in their absence? And whether the person standing at your door is someone who can meet you there. Not where you were, where you are now. Because you did not stand still and wait. You moved. You grew. You built something in the silence that belongs entirely to you. And whatever you decide, whether you let them in or hold the door closed with grace and clarity, that decision comes not from fear, not from longing, not from the hope that this time will be different. It comes from the deepest, most unshakable thing you found while they were gone. Your own knowing, closing unforgettable, not because of noise. The people who are truly remembered are not always the loudest. They are not the ones who chased, who performed, who made their absence impossible to ignore through dramatic declaration. They are the ones who left a specific quality of presence, a warmth, a depth, a way of making someone feel that being known was the safest thing in the world. And then, when it was not honored, departed with dignity. No performance, no bitterness, no noise. Just the quiet, unambiguous signal of someone who knows their worth and refuses to negotiate it. That signal echoes. It follows people into their next chapter, their next relationship, their next quiet evening, when honesty finally arrives and asks its most important question. What did I have And what did I do with it? You may never hear the answer. It may never reach you across whatever distance now exists between you. But somewhere, in a quiet moment, they did not expect, the answer finds them, and the memory of you arrives with it. Not because you were perfect, not because you were exceptional in ways the world could easily see, but because you were real. And real things, true things, do not disappear simply because someone chose not to look.